morning to everybody. Thanks for joining us at this session. At this session, we have a really nice panel. I'll just introduce quickly to the I'll just give a quick introduction to the panelists we have today. On my left is Mr. Sanjay Papneja. He's the Chief General Manager of Petrochemical Projects at Indian Oil Corporation Limited. He has an experience of about 30 years in chemical engineering, both in upstream as well as downstream. He's currently engaged in Business Development Division of Indian Oil and is responsible for conceptualizing of new petrochemical projects. Next we have is Mr. Anil Kumar. He's the Chief General Manager in Process Design and Development Department in EIL. He has more than 2.5 decades of extensive experience, and he's looked at various processes such as refinery configuration, conceptualization studies, technical due diligence, vision plans for clients, in-house technology development, and other technical services for refineries and petrochemical complexes. We also have on the panel Mr. Parveen Kalia. He's a process specialist and subject matter expert on linear programming at Fluor. He has more than 15 years of industry experience in chemical engineering with hands-on experience in various projects, and he's looked at feasibility studies and detailed engineering as well. He's put in more than 10 years at Fluor, and his main focus here has been configuration studies and linear programming for selecting optimum configuration for local as well as global clients. I also have on the panel today Mr. Arun Bhardwaj. He's General Manager, Refinery Operations at HPCL Mittal Energy Limited. He's a chemical engineer with over 30 years of experience in the petroleum refining sector. He started his career at HPCL's Mumbai refinery in technical services and then worked in operations as well. His current contributions include finalization of configuration and design of grassroots refinery, and he's also looking at upcoming petrochemical complex of HMEL. Joining us virtually is Mr. Manoj Kumar Srivastava. He's the President and Managing Director at ONGC Petro Additions Limited. Mr. Srivastava joined ONGC Petro Additions OPAL as a President on 15th March 2017. He holds a master's degree in chemical technology with specialization in plastic technology from HPTI Kanpur. He has more than 32 years of experience in diversified technologies of petrochemical operations. He has a rich experience of a large-sized petrochemical complex from inception to production, which includes conceptualization, project execution, pre-commissioning, startup and plant stabilization, and process optimization. Prior to joining OPAL, he was working with Petro Rabigh in Saudi Arabia and was heading all upstream units of phase 2, including naphtha complex, aroma complex, MTBE, isobutyl, methyl methacrylate, cumene, phenol, and so many other units. So please give them a big round of applause before we start the session. Thank you. Crude to chemical refineries has been a buzzword for a long time in India because we know that over the last few years, and particularly during COVID, we saw that demand for gasoline and diesel started tapering. In fact, even globally, most people are projecting there will be a slowdown in demand for these chemicals, and there will be a shift to chemicals instead. Refineries would find chemicals more lucrative over a period of years. And that is rightly so. But before we begin, I would request Parveen Kalia to share his views with us on integration.
Good morning, everyone. It's my pleasure to be standing here in front of such a great audience and to be part of such a esteemed panel where a lot of industry stalwarts are here in the field where I'm working on. And my role here is to start and set a basis for the discussion by giving us Fluor's view or overall view on integration as well as on decarbonization. Basically, when we talk about refinery, petrochemical integration and decarbonization, both is in coming years will be the part of integrations. None of the refineries in coming years will have an integration without decarbonization. So what we are planning here to touch base on both these topics and just set up a quick basis so that to move forward. I would like to thank GRPC team for giving us the opportunity as well as my organization Fluor for giving us an opportunity to speak here. Coming to the presentation, before I begin on the actual, I just want to bring to the notice that Fluor has come in a big way in energy transition in last few years. In fact, we are in carbon capture as a licensor from some years. And our panel of experts are giving webinars, and those webinars are available at flow.com. You can visit that. I would quickly will run through the agenda. I'm going to cover views on emerging EV threat globally, what our experts have seen, and golden yields for oil to chemical, what is the refinery of the future, an Indian case study, decarbonization and carbon capture. After summing with my perspectives, I will then hand it over to Stuti for a panel discussion. So I would like to start off with the global view on emerging EV threat to fossil fuels. As you can see from this slide, what we have done, we have taken the data from various open sources as well as our own in-house research. And what we found that if we talk about this decade, globally this decade will be going to be a decade where there will be a transition from ICE operated fuels vehicles to EV vehicles. I know in India it will still take some time because as Mr. Prabdas has pointed out yesterday that it will be a gradual process. But if we talk about it by the end of the decade, so it all depends upon the battery price that we are having. And if we are able to get the battery price around $65, then it will be a win-win situation for electric vehicles. And the major transition will come when we will have a solid state batteries available. And that will change the course of this discussion. Then comes the point that what it tells us. It tells us that we need to diversify. Refiners need to diversify. We engineering companies need to think while doing configurations to diversify. And so we have brought up this slide just to show that where the things are. The numbers are based on whatever is available in open system. So maybe there is some variation. But if you look at it for a typical 15 MMTPA refinery, what we found that there are refineries which are coming at the targeting. They have not come yet, but they're targeting like Panjin, in which Fluor has worked on with a 55% chemical yield. And then there are refineries in India also which are targeting more. And in fact, I was just speaking to our my co-panelist IOCL. They are integrating it in a big way, and so is HMEL. So basically the key is that there is a golden yield of 37 to 40% that refiners are targeting, because in India scenario will be there for transportation fuel. It will be still there for in coming 15 years or a decade or two, and that's what all of them have said yesterday also. Now when we talk about yields, what we can do, we can move from a pure play fuels refinery to we can go first, if there is existing refinery, they can go to a first set of integration, which can be in a way of max propylene mode FCCs or DCU. But now it has moved further, where most of refineries are targeting petro FCCs. And in fact, as Fluor, we have done projects for 3 NOCs where we have tried to do that. And most importantly, as HMEL is doing, as IOCL Panipat is doing, we have a fully integrated refineries, where we can have a CCR which is more aromatic based, and then a steam crackers. And when we will do this, the GRM uplift will be there. If a normal GRM is around $8 per barrel, there will be a plus of in the range of $5 to $8 per barrel, which we can target. So the future toolkit of the refinery is to have a CCR, to have the integration as well as aromatics, steam cracker, and after steam cracker, what we need to do? That's another question. So we just tried to answer that question by looking at it this slide. We have done an internal case study based on our experience. We have taken a refinery which is a standard fuels refinery with all the major secondary units, and then we had 2 options, a polypropylene versus a niche derivative. So the point that we are trying to make here is that if you are integrating, you need to think of about the going towards the niche derivatives, and there is a substantial benefits there. If a capex is a base there for polypropylene case and GRM is a base, then capex will definitely be higher for when you will go to the niche derivatives, but the GRM benefit is much higher. So but the key thing is here that whosoever will move first in this will have the advantage. So that's all about the first part of my presentation, which where I have looked at the integration to set a basis that where we are going and what are our views. Secondly, when we talk about decarbonization, so in a refinery, we need to integrate the decarbonization as well. So there are means of doing that, like you can do a fuel substitution, you can have a feedstock substitution, recycling, and more importantly, carbon capture, utilization and storage. And just to give a heads up that we are having, as I said, we are having a technology with the carbon capture, where we are using either chemical solvent or physical solvent or without solvent. And moreover, we are having experience where we have worked with other companies for the technologies, so we can integrate with that. Just before summing up two perspectives, I would like to share views from one of the global paper on the carbon capture, which is important when we talk about the integration as far as carbon capture is concerned. This is a global CCC Institute paper, and there is another there are 2 or 3 more papers in this sort, which from various organizations, which can be looked into. Here, if you look, there is a breakage that when you look at carbon capture in a refinery, so you need to look at a compression, transportation, and injections cost and the monitoring cost. And this need to be integrated for a brownfield also. Like for, if I talk of a storage, then if the crude wells are there which are not in use, those can be used for storage. So all these things need to be looked at. And on the right hand side, we have tried to capture the cost part of it. We are not looking at the technical part of it. So the cost is like around, for FCC, if I take, it's in the 60 to 70 USD per ton of CO2. But this is very much impacted by few parameters, which is like what is the CO2 partial pressure availability in the carbon capture. I think there is a session at the end of the day today where the speakers will deal into this in much more detail. So where we will have a CO2 partial pressure, and the scale of plant is also important. Why is it important? Because if you look, when the partial pressure is low, the scale is low, then it is very much, cost is very much varying. So what is telling that for refineries or the plants where they can have their own carbon capture, they can sustain. But otherwise, in future is going to be the CO2 hubs. And that's what exactly what European market is doing. They are coming with the projects where they are having a carbon capture hubs with the, across the plants. And just to summarize my perspectives, so definitely refiners need to move beyond motor fuels to future-proof their refineries by petrochemical integration. That's the key here. But they cannot forget the fuels also. So they need to balance in there. And the key balance will come when we talk about gasoline and diesel, because Indian market is still sensitive to diesel. And but there is a variation which is happening as far as ATF and gasoline is coming. So there will be some more, in future there will be more demand for that, still it will be there. And even if it is a refinery or if it is a decarbonization, some of the key factors are that the size and scale does matter. You need to look at the plot space, which is a key. Whenever we have dealt with any Indian refiner, we have concluded that plot space in India is very key. And final disposition to a point there they can give a better margins is very important. If we talk about carbon capture, give 40 to 50% CO2 removal. We are targeting 90% now. Pre-combustion is a preferred captured route for SMR, even for ATR, and post-combustion for reformer flue gases. And if we talk about the brownfield projects, because most of refiners in India are already there, so this need a very careful construction planning for doing these integrations, and need to be there so that they can blend nicely with the existing operation. And as far as the process point of view, configuration also need to be looked at very carefully, not only on the process side, but on the utilities side as well. So this is thus, and if you want to touch base, we have a subject matter experts who are in various, and they are available. And we have a visiting card, so we will share this presentation later on. And we are available on various social networkings also. So this is my views on integration to set a basis. Now I will hand over back to Stuti for taking us forward. Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Praveen, for your insight into integration. Okay, let's move on. Asia has the highest amount of integration globally. So on a parameter, if you look at it, about 70% of Asian refineries are integrated with chemicals. So when we look at Asia, one question that I think comes to my mind is the supply that we're projecting, is it overinvestment? Is there any overinvestment in the sector, or is that will the supply deficit still stay? So Sanjay, my first question is to you. At Indian Oil, what steps are being taken for maximizing integration of petchems with refineries, and what is the future you see?
Good morning, everyone. In fact, at Indian Oil, the need of integration, I mean, that more conversion to chemical than to fuel was since long back. And we started with a small step in 2004 when we came up with the LAB unit at our Gujarat refinery. And after LAB, we came up with another unit of PXPT at Panipat refinery. So we started with utilizing aromatic value chain of these crude molecules. And then after, we took a big step when our naphtha cracker was commissioned at Panipat in 2010. Basically, it was the first step toward the integrating our available naphtha. We pulled the naphtha from our three major refineries, that is Mathura, Panipat, and Gujarat. See, at Indian Oil, we have about 10 refineries located all over the India. So we have molecules available at all these locations. The challenge is to integrate these molecules, and for a sizable unit, we need to bring them together at particular place. So naphtha cracker was first such example, wherein we pooled the naphtha from three major refineries. And this basically was subsequent to naphtha cracker, we came up with another C4 value chain of butadiene, and then styrene, butadiene, rubber. And then subsequent to that, we were supported by our own in-house technology, Indomax. So wherever there was refinery expansion, that was integrated with Indomax, which helped in maximizing olefinic yield in terms of higher C3 up to an extent of about 70 to 18%. So that could be utilized for further conversion into petrochemicals like polypropylene. And we are also upcoming with the OXO unit at Gujarat, that is for production of butyl acrylate. And wherever now refinery expansion is coming, it is being supported by Indomax and further enhancing the yield of C3 for converting it to more chemicals. Apart from naphtha, currently if you see, we are placed at about 3.2 million metric ton per annum of petrochemical capacity, and that approved plan in next 3 to 4 years will take us to about 7 million metric ton of capacity. And currently we are at about 4% of conversion to petrochemical conversion, total conversion, and we will be at about 7% in next 3 to 4 years, and beyond another 4 to 5 years, we would be touching the level of about 15%. So that's how we plan to gradually convert more chemical out of this crude oil feedstock. Challenges in this regard, then of course, major challenges nowadays basically is of course that OSBL cost. ISBL, if we see, that is mainly dependent on licensed technology. So there we can't do much, but of course some of the license fees are even as high as about 40 to 50% of total plant cost. So that also becomes a challenge. But apart from that, OSBL is something which colleagues from EL and Torlike company can help to reduce, and they can further add on to such conversion of chemicals. So that's it from my side.
Thank you, Sanjay. Arun, my next question is to you. HMEL is also looking at integration. So what are the key drivers of integration there, and how has integration evolved over the years?
I just cover the macro perspective of integration. I think lot has been told by Praveen. See how this integration started. Let me start from the late 90s, when APM was dismantled and there was a requirement of meeting Euro specifications. So that's how the refinery configurations have evolved at that point in time. And during that time, Government of India had approved 3 refineries in the country, which were supposed to self-sustained basis. So they had to be complex refineries so that they generate higher GRM for the company. So to start with, all these configurations had co-gasification in the configuration. But when we did the detailed study, we found that it is very costly. It was almost 30% our cost. So technology was not that matured at that point in time. So we had to drop all that from our configuration. So we started looking at what we should do and to maximize GRM for our company. So we came up with an idea that let's have petrochemical configuration. So to start with, we didn't go for very big configuration petrochemical, but we came up with idea with FCC with the high propane yield. So in fact, we were only the third FCC which had very high propane yield outside China. So first one was in Thailand, second was in Saudi Aramco, and third one was us. So we had 19% propane yield from our FCC. So after that, I think whatever refineries have come in India after that, they have copied this configuration, and they all have FCC with the high propane yield. So what are the drivers towards going in for petrochemical? So there's OPEC has been controlling the market, and the crude prices have been controlled. So just to give an example, the Arab Heavy supposed to be heavier crude, but it is available at premium for last 3 years, except during the period when pandemic period when it was available at discount. Otherwise, it has been available only at premium. Second thing is the demand of all the petrochemical is in double digits. So it assures you whatever you make from the petrol complex will get sold. Third thing is with petrochemical complex, you are assured of margin from your company, because there are always pricing cycles for every industry. Sometimes refinery industry you have lower margin. Sometimes you don't make from petrochemicals. But both going down simultaneously, so it's hardly any chance. So you have to take advantage of if you have an integrated complex. So you are always assured of GRM from your complex. Now, what to integrate? How much to integrate? So there are three kind of options you can do. One is that you have a aromatic complex, downstream PX and PTA. Then second is you can have a steam cracker for generation of propylene and ethylene. And third thing is you have both. But having both simultaneously is not possible for a smaller refinery like us. It may be possible if you have a capacity over 15 million tons, because you don't have sufficient naphtha for making both products. So now coming to what to integrate and how much to integrate, basically for our refinery, so we had since we had petrochemical FCC which was producing high amount of off gas, plus we had coker also. So it generates a lot of off gas, which is a very good potential for feedstock for cracker. Plus because of this FCC, we had high amount of LPG produced in the complex. So that because off gas and LPG, they give very high yield of ethylene. So we had these two streams which were very good for our cracker. Third thing is standard naphtha. I think naphtha is available in every refinery. So naphtha was the logical choice for it. Plus, as we know that because of availability of LPG everywhere in the country and a lot of gas network, kerosene demand is supposed to go down in future. In fact, it is not getting sold also in the, I think, 2 states have banned kerosene. So that stream is also potential available for our complex. So we had built this our petroleum complex with all these feeds. Now, in addition to that, when we build our refinery, original refinery, we had built very wide range of crude APIs. At that point in time, we thought that we'll take because crude discounts they vary time to time. So we thought that we'll take the advantage of pricing cycles and so that we can process any type of crude in the refinery. So that design is actually going to help us in future when we commission our petroleum complex. So when you have a petroleum complex, you require lighter feeds. So earlier we have been targeting to have a lower API so that we can fill our cokers and maximize our margin because heavier crudes are available at discounts. Now when we go for polymers, we require lighter feeds. So our feed to the cracker complex need to maximize. So at that point in time, our crude diet will shift from heavier crudes to maybe lighter crudes. But ultimately, based on the LP, it will decide what kind of crudes we are going to process. So now coming to what are the advantages we have when you have integrated petroleum complex. See, naphtha cracker or ethylene cracker, they produce a lot of off-gas and hydrogen. So these two streams, they can be used back in our refinery as fuel. Off-gas can be used as fuel, and hydrogen basically for our hydroprocessing requirements. So that way, integration is helping in both sides. It is helping both refinery as well as petrochemical sites. Now, the other advantage of integration is basically in terms of pricing cycles. We have seen the Singapore GRM 1 year back, it was only $2 per barrel. So at that point in time, if you have a petroleum complex along with your complex, so we will generate money from that. But now situation has not for integration as of now. Last 2 months after Ukraine war, the Singapore GRM has crossed $20. In last 20 years, we have never seen such kind of GRM. So the crack from diesel has crossed $50. It was never there. In last 3-4 whatever years I have seen maximum 15, 20 at the most, but never ever have seen I don't know going up $50. So today refinery is making huge amount of money. Though we may not be making money from the petroleum complex, at least we are getting advantage from the refinery. So when you have a petroleum complex integrated with your refinery, so you can take advantage of both pricing cycles as well as for refinery as well as for petrochemicals. That's all from me.
Thank you, Arun. I think that's a really interesting perspective on exactly how to integrate forward. Manoj, my next question is to you. How can a refinery make integration meaningful? What are the strategies that we need to look at? Manoj, can you hear us?
Yeah, ma'am, you are talking to me? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, my question is to you on how we can make integration more meaningful for a refinery.
So to start with, ma'am, let me thank, GRPC 2023 for inviting me in advance. Second, my fellow panelists, who have physically traveled. In fact, I feel sorry actually not traveling there. Bhopal is passing through, a major turnaround actually. The entire plant is shut down for its maintenance activity after 5 years since we started in March 2017. Bhopal runs 2 million tons of petrochemical complex and our feed are C2, C3, C4 and naphtha, and we produce all kind of polymers, polyolefins. This is broad about OPAL. Now coming back to your question, I'm trying to digress little bit, from the technical stuff now. So what I feel, that the integration within the company and outside the company has become very, very essential in a non-technical domain. Now, what I want to say by this, within the company, the integration between the functions is of vital importance, because now heading the company, I can see this perspective very closely. And the need of the hour is, to have a proper integration between functions and within functions. So when I say that, the data becomes a key point for that. And now the companies have started, putting up a data policy, data strategy. Not many companies in our countries have this, but I think we need to have a strategy. Each company should have a strategy of data management with the company, how the data is managed within the company. And when I say this, I will give some examples how, it helps the company. Like in a petrochemical complex like ours, we handle the data in the marketing function, in the finance function, plants, maintenance, operation, all kind of data are being handled. So once we have a strategy, data management strategy in the company, then the framework can be put in place how to manage the data. Now, starting from a supply chain, how the integration helps the company to improve the margins and those kind of stuff. Right from the supply chain till the end product, which is production. If the proper data strategy and integration in place, the industry can handle the data in a real-time manner and definitely improve the margins. And when I talk about outside the company, the integration, to me, this has become a big subject now for discussion because of the external factors which are basically pinching the petrochemical due to this war and these kind of stuff, So now the time has come that, we have to have a strategy of integration, outside integration. When I say this, during the crisis, Ukraine crisis, the prices of some of the catalysts and the additives were going up, and they went to 3-4 kind of numbers, So when I went into detail, I found out that why it is happening actually. We have manufacturer in India who makes that additive or catalyst, but the source material is coming from somewhere, maybe from China, it may be from Malaysia or somewhere. Now, because of the war, the entire supply chain got interrupted, and this fellow in India doesn't make the source material, so he doesn't get the raw material, and he has to source the raw material by hook or by crook to supply the material to us, and thereby the prices have gone up manifold. So the need has come for the industry. I think this is to the entire industry that we have to see how to become the Atmanirbhar in the real sense. So what I felt, in this crisis, whatever we may say, but we are still not Atmanirbhar, we are dependent on other countries to a great extent. The petrochemicals, all the inputs, coming, the critical inputs, we are dependent on all other countries. So what I am trying to say that the integration within the industry is very important, and the data management within the company, between functions. Nowadays, lot of IT-enabled tools are available, like AI kind of things. The company has to use to bring about a change. And actually, this change is nothing but it is only sustainability. The petrochemical people, they know, like my refinery plant told that the refineries are making good money now. No, the petrochemical plant will say, we are feeling the pinch now. We are in a very compressed margin current state of affairs. So the need of the hour is the integration, and I would say, the data is the key here. Data and the technology to handle the data. So this is what I want to say actually, and in case anyone has any questions, they can ask me. Thank you.
Thank you, Manoj. I think we'll take questions once the session is drawing to a close. Anil, my next question is to you. How do you see India's crude diet changing, particularly when we look at a move towards refining to chemicals, particularly petrochemicals?
Thank you, Sati. Very good morning to all of you. As Mr. Papneja was just mentioning that up until say about 2010, the refineries were primarily configured with an objective of meeting the fuels demand. We were not looking at the petrochemical demands per se till that time. It is only after that that the demand for petrochemicals picked up and we started looking at the integrated complexes. So up until then, we were actually designing the refineries for a crude API of about say 27 to 32 in that range. And the unit capacities for secondary and the tertiary block were fixed based on the yields for those corresponding APIs. Now, as we look to integrate further with the petrochemical block, there was a need to generate naphtha to have a sizable naphtha cracker complex. But unfortunately, because the naphtha make was less, we were not able to have a sizable or an economic size cracker in that complex. So, like the complex in Panipat had to actually import some bit of naphtha from Mathura as well as Gujarat to meet that 800 KT capacity because naphtha was not available. Diesel was in excess. We could have cracked diesel, but that would have called for, hydrogen demand would have been there. We could also have steam cracked diesel, but that would not have been economical and our furnaces were not designed for that. So the option was to actually look for crudes which make higher quantities of naphtha. And as Mr. Bhardwaj was just mentioning that they're already looking at changing the crudes to a lighter API so as to be able to have that naphtha for their petrochemical block. The other option which we feel would be more profitable is that we co-process lighter crudes or condensates in a separate fractionation unit, generate that bit of naphtha that is required for the cracker complex, and that way we will be processing the heavier low API crudes as well as higher API crudes, and we will be able to satisfy the capacity requirements of both the refineries units and the petrochemical units. So that is what we feel at EI.
Thank you. Right now, our popular debate is that oil demand globally will peak in 2030. In India, that deadline may be slightly far off, but then that is something that is at the back of the mind of all the refiners. Eventually, they'll have to evolve. But then, how do you balance that with the new regulations that are coming up on sustainability, on carbon neutrality? So, Arun, my next question is to you. If someone wants to invest in a new facility or move into integration, what are the key factors that need to be kept in mind, particularly when you look at carbon neutrality?
Basically, we're talking about carbon neutrality.
So, we need to, when you put up a new integration, what are the key factors that you need to keep in mind?
Okay, yeah.
I would like if you could touch on carbon neutrality as well.
See, basically, unlike refinery, refinery produces very standard first slate, LPG, kerosene, diesel, and so on. You may have different configurations. Okay, when I was doing the configuration study for our refinery, Orient refinery, we studied thousands of configurations. But that's still the first slate was almost fixed type. We have only 3-4 products. But when we go for petrochemical, a huge amount of variation which is possible. Like from propylene, you can make multiple thousands of products. From ethylene, also you can make. Plus, you have different combination of benzene, what you produce. So there are many combinations which you can produce from a petroleum complex. So, in addition, see all these complexes comes with a very high capital cost. And to come to a particular configuration, you have to do a lot of studies. You have to do a lot of market studies. So I think whenever anybody is designing or new complex, they have to take various options. They have to maybe talk to various people, take various ideas from various people while fixing the configuration. As you know that whatever decision configuration you've taken now, that is going to take 4 to 5 years of implementation, and then maybe 3 years for stabilization. So by the time you are actually stabilized, the situation may change drastically. So whatever, plus because of huge capital cost, whatever money you are going to generate post that, you have to really think multiple times. You have to take care of your regional requirements, because just to tell you that if you are inland refinery and if you are sitting on the coast, your options for petrochemical may change. Like for a PVC, suppose you want to go for PVC, so you require chlorine for that, and for chlorine you want salt. So if you are sitting on the coast, then you have access to see what, then you can make salt and then make chlorine from there. But if you are in land refinery, this becomes very difficult for you. So getting all this salt from, you need to huge amount of land. Plus, okay, this is about India, but let us say if you are in maybe Middle East, there you have a very cheap crude. Whatever you can make from the crude, you can generate money from that. But that luxury is not available when you are in India. See, whatever crude comes, you are on the mercy of the crude suppliers. So whatever decisions you are taking on the crude diet, that will remain for long with you. So all these regional factors are to be considered while designing complex. The other factor is basically in terms of the natural gas. See, all the gas crackers, today the gas prices is over $20 per MBTU. It has touched almost $53 per MBTU in the month of February, March. See, at that gas price, the gas cracker will never be economical. Only thing is that currently whatever the gas crackers are in the world, they have got term supplies, so their prices are controlled. But that, how long that will continue, you never know. So whether you put to gas cracker, you put naphtha cracker, is once you take decision, you are bound by the decisions. So all these factors is a very plus. See, now people are coming with all the petrochemicals. We are seeing that there is growth of petrochemicals almost in 2 digits. But suddenly, if everybody starts integrating, there may be a situation when there will be surplus of petrochemicals, and then all the investment will go haywire. So, because I told you earlier, because these have long gestation periods, an additional take will be there with you for your lifetime. So these are the challenges current refineries are facing on the decarbonation. Yeah, definitely, as all these industries, refining industry generate a lot of carbon dioxide. And as we go along, these decarbonation requirements will put a lot of pressure on the refineries. So you have to invest more on these things, and although industry is already in challenge, like refinery, okay, now it is a different thing for the last 2 months, but earlier it was you are not making much money from the refinery industry. So if all these decarbonation requirements comes, then basically it will put pressure on the industry, and you have to be prepared for that. Thank you.
I think that's a very interesting point that you raised on oversupply, because that's a major challenge. Everybody is looking at integration, but there will probably come a point where your supply is more than demand. It will take a few years for the demand to catch up. When we look at that kind of a scenario, Sanjay, my next question is to you. What are the challenges you think the refineries will face when they look at things like optimization?
Before we come on to that, I would like to supplement what has been just mentioned. With respect to carbon neutrality, as a small step towards this process, what companies have started adopting is that like these units are mostly major power consumers. And as an immediate step, what has been done, that mix of power has been started to be utilized. Like it's a mix of renewables, of solar plus wind plus fossil. That's the first immediate step that has been already taken by the companies. Other than that, of course, there are some research is already going on, but they have also come up with some initial trials, like reverse conversion of some of the polymers into its base chemical. I mean, we at our own R&D they have succeeded into for conversion of polystyrene into styrene, that reverse conversion. So that kind of chemical recycling kind of thing is also being looked into. So if we see that conceptualization of such chemical projects along with consideration of carbon utilization, then we have these two steps which are being immediately looked into. First is that recycling, then a mix of power to be utilized, and then some units have also adopted that carbon capture kind of thing. At one of the Indian Oil installation, we have already conceptualized a carbon capture unit which will be utilizing that carbon captured from refining operation, and that will be utilized as a gas injection to nearby oil producing field for enhanced oil recovery. So those kind of various steps are being conceptualized. Now coming on to the over investment kind of thing. So if we see the projection for Indian perspective till 2040, even if we consider that single-use plastic ban, and if we consider the potential coming out of this recycling, organized recycling, we are left with a demand of more than 45 million metric ton per annum. And if we have to meet that demand, we require investment of about 1,80,000 crores kind of investment, out of which only 6,000 crore, 6 lakh crore is in pipeline. So that means still a huge investment required to meet the demand that is projected for 2040 and 2045. So if we are merely focusing at domestic demand itself, that itself requires a huge investment if we see the scenario beyond 2040 and 45, because as Mr. Anil has also indicated that ratio of fuel to chemical is gradually transforming, gradually shifting. Refineries of 2000 had a ratio of about not more than 4% of chemical. Now that the projection beyond 30 is that they must have a ratio of about 15% of chemical and balance as a fuel. So, I mean, that is how it is to be tackled. So, oversupply per se in Indian perspective, though we have a challenge from country like China who are, but still if we do have indigenous production, substituting that import, that can easily compete with those kind of oversupplies.
Thank you. I think you brought up an interesting point of demand growing at such a rapid pace. Anil, I would like to understand from you, do you see a diversity in the product mix downstream in petrochemicals when we look at additional investments happening?
Yeah, in fact, recently we had concluded a study along with IOCL on the demand pattern, as Mr. Putneja was saying. The requirement is to have at least one cracker every 2 years up until 2040. So that is basically the pattern that we see up to 2040. But in terms of products, what we had concluded in that study was that the demand will remain majorly in the bulk petrochemicals. Say, if you look at the ethylene, it will be in polyethylenes and PVC primarily. And if it is propylene, it will be in polypropylene. That will cover about 90% of the monomer demand for both ethylenes and propylenes. Balance 10% will actually diversify into specialty and the niche petrochemicals in both C2 and C3 segments. So it will primarily be, say, in cumene phenol, polycarbonates, or if you look at propylene in the oxos, acrylates, that will be route, but those will be in a fairly limited proportion in relation to the bulk polymers. In addition, we also envisage that the PX extraction from the back end of the cracker, that will be pursued by the clients because that is a profitable route. So that will be pursued in addition. And the crackers which will be coming up will primarily be dual feed or liquid crackers mainly, because we have demand for both ethylene and propylene. So we will be generating quite a bit of benzene. So the derivatives of benzene will also find place in that segment. And if you look at benzene, it will be, say, cumin phenol is one of them, and they will also try and diversify major, somewhere into the pharmaceutical intermediates also, as Mr. Prabdas was also mentioning yesterday. So that is the product profile that we see in the near future.
Thank you. Praveen, my next question is to you. We touched upon transportation fuels earlier. So I would like to understand whether that would still be a criteria for configuration selection.
As far as configuration selections are concerned, and based on taking on the cue from what my fellow panelists have said and what I have said in the beginning in my presentation, transportation fuels will still, since India is a developing economy, and transportation fuel demand will still be there, and it will be a deciding factor in the configuration selections. But we need to be sure of one thing, that for any project that comes to us, and when we discuss with the clients, the main key criteria is how much return it is giving us. ROI, what is the ROI and what's the capex investment we are looking at. So considering that, so transport, there will be a balance, as I said earlier, that the key parameters will be like the conversion from the refineries need to be targeted high. That's why the unit selections will be such that the 90% type of conversion can be achieved. Secondly, though transportation fuel still be there, there will be integration with respect to petrochemicals. As Sanjay sir has just said that from 15% onwards to 30-35%, as we are talking about second generation integration nowadays. I want to add one more thing which I said, that it all depends upon the region also, because we have done a project recently with South Sudan, and we have seen that they are not targeting petrochemicals considering the region they are in. They are targeting only transportation fuel. Similarly, there are refineries in India which are more dependent on the transportation fuel, and still having a good GRMs, and I think Bina is one of the great example in that. So it also depends upon the region that is there. And just to conclude, I think last thing, demand, not only on the petrochemical side we need to look at the supply and the demand, but also on the refinery side, on the fuel side, as rightly told by sir, that in Singapore the things have changed suddenly based on that. So to conclude, I would say that transportation fuels still be a major criteria for deciding, but it will not be the only criteria. There will be few more important points that will be part of it. Thanks.
Thank you, thank you. Manoj, my next question is to you. You said that your plant is under turnaround, and you talked about data strategy. So I would like to understand, how do you combine the two? Are you looking at some kind of data strategy in your maintenance operations as well?
So, well, actually, you know what, I got very close to this subject, about a year or so, when, all of us were suffering with COVID. And then the things moved faster in our company. What we did actually, let me explain you something within micro level. So in any organization, you will find the pockets of data, which is like the operations will have data on VCS, the maintenance, electrical will have data on panel, there will be something in PLC, and this kind of instrumentation will have. So what we have done, we are doing actually at a very advanced stage. We are trying to integrate all this technical data in first phase. So the operation, maintenance, electrical, instrumentation, all kind of data which is floating in the company will be brought to one platform. And then we will exploit this to use the AI and all kind of current IT techniques, to improve the reliability of the plant. Basically, that will lead to more margin. This is my thinking actually. So maybe other companies are also doing, but they can take this as a clue. And I have, whatever I've seen in my career of 38, 39 years, I find that there is a scope of improvement on this subject in practically all the companies. So once we bring all the data at one platform, and from there, we can work upon and do integration and do improvements respect to the reliability and optimization of various inputs, catalysts and additives kind of things. And I mean, this can be thought of by the industry. This is my experience, what I had, and we are implementing in our company now at a company level.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the audience for our panel members? If not, there's one question I would like to pose, and it's slightly more generic. Petrochemical demand is increasing exponentially. Be it plastics or polymers and olefins, as you said, for all bulk chemicals. How do you balance this with increasing the regulations around carbon neutrality and sustainability? What will be the tip-off?
As I already mentioned that the new conceptualization of project, they are to be supported by more share of renewable powers. That is one thing which can be immediately done. Renewable means it also not only, it helps in carbon neutrality, it also leads to lowering of overall power cost for a particular project. So that helps in more realization also. Apart from that, some research are already there. They are at advanced stage, like as I told you that we have chemical recycling kind of concept coming up, wherein we can convert end product back into its basic monomer or basic feedstock product. One of such technology already being developed by our own R&D, that is from polystyrene to styrene, that is at advanced stage. And there are some other licensors, I think LYB, and they are also working on development of catalysts that can convert used plastic into a feedstock that can be fed to a cracker kind of complex along with the routine naphtha feed. So those kind of things are already in pipeline, and shortly we'll see development in that regard. So new projects can be clubbed with these kind of technologies. Apart from that, carbon capture is also now a reality, and already projects are being conceptualized. So that this can become a feedstock for some some more chemicals. So this is how we see that immediate development in this regard. Others can supplement.
Yeah, I think the work on having electric furnaces instead of fuel-fired furnaces for cracker, that is, some licenses are thinking about it. So if that comes up, that is also reduce some amount of carbon footprint in the industry.
Just to add on a point here, carbon capture and those technologies, fuel substitution, electric heater, that will be there. Along with that, globally, refiners are looking at bringing in renewable fuels. There are projects going on where existing hydro heaters, they are trying to bring in the renewable fuels, be it a second generation, more in that direction. And like a renewable diesel in comparison to biodiesel is more like a normal diesel, it can be blended. Similarly, ethanol blending into gasoline, those are also some of the factors that can come in. And we feel that this carbon neutrality now need to be brought into the picture at this conceptualization stage itself. And while configuration selection, somehow it need to be monetized, because LP being a economic model, it need to be monetized somehow, and we were discussing with for that and other vendors for that. So that need to come from there, that how we can monetize this carbon capture in this carbon constrained world. Because if we start at that point from there itself, it will help in the future, because right now what we are looking at is what is there after 15 years. But the refineries which we are going to plan in coming years will be there after 30 years or 20 years. So we need to think from that perspective as well. Thank you.
So I'd like to add one more perspective on this polymer demand supply. See, when we talk about India, we talk about that India has very low plastic demand per capita. But we need to understand the population of just Delhi NCR is almost equal to the population of Canada. So you see how much, whatever you are consuming, consumption of plastic per square kilometer is very large as compared to, if you just compare with a country like Canada. So if we start increasing, if we have plastic consumption equal to developed countries, the amount of plastic waste we are going to generate will be very, very huge. And it may pose so much problem, and then ultimately there may be some government or some other people may come that, okay, enough, I think we have to do something on this plastic waste. So maybe as industry leaders, maybe we have to work on how to recycle this whatever plastic we are generating from our complex. Though it may be slightly detrimental for our whatever new polymer we are generating, but even then, it is worthwhile that we work on maybe depolymerization of plastic waste or incineration so that they can be recycled back to the all our own use.
Thanks for sharing our perspectives, everybody. I think we've had a really interesting discussion on integration as well as carbon neutrality. Please thank the panel with a huge round of applause. Thank you so much.